perhaps more controversy and disagreement about the registers of the human voice than about any other part of the art of teaching singing. We have teachers who deny the existence of registers, teachers who say they should be ignored, teachers who insist on 5 or 3 or 2, some who train the registers up, some who train them down, and again others who never think about them at all. This was published in 1920 and written by Agnes Larkham, a singer and teacher of singing. But the problem with registers had been going on for centuries already by the time that she wrote this. So what exactly are registers? Well, Agnes put it simply as a series of homogeneous sounds produced by one mechanism. The earliest written sources on teaching singing, if they mention registers at all, talk about 2 registers, the natural voice and the false voice. They were also known as the chest and the head. And they were called these not because they're produced in the chest or the head, but because that's where you can feel them resonating. So if you've ever been to a concert with a very loud bass, and you've felt it vibrating in your chest, that's kind of the feeling that you get when you sing in chest voice. And similarly, you can feel the head voice buzzing up here. They were called natural and false. Falsetto, in Italian, you might have heard that term, because the idea was that the falsetto was not the proper way of singing. It was so much weaker naturally than the natural chest voice, that it was only used for the high notes, for being able to carry up the voice as high as possible without straining the chest voice. But at the same time, there was also the 3 register theory, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, because we're taking for our authority Agnes Larkham's teacher, and the first person to ever actually see inside the human throat whilst a person was still alive and see the registers in action. He observed 3 registers. He's one of the most important figures in the history of singing, so we're going to be talking about him a lot on this channel. Get used to hearing about Manuel Garcia. Manuel Garcia II, or the sequel if you like, was an excellent singer who came from a family of outstanding singers, who decided to become a teacher, I think because of his struggles with performance anxiety. And he'd also at one time been an army medic, so he'd seen a lot more of the inside of larynxes than most singing teachers at that point. But he wanted to see inside a living, moving larynx, so he invented the laryngoscope, which, using mirrors, allowed him to look inside his throat, his student's throat, and the throats of the professional singers, and see how the vocal cords move and interact, and how the voice happens for the first time. In 1855, he presented his findings on how the ligaments, tendons, cartilage and membranes work together to produce registers. He still used the term falsetto, which Agnes Larkham later changed to medium, which is really more helpful because he placed the falsetto in between the chest and the head registers. So we have the chest as the lowest voice, the falsetto in the middle, and the head as the highest range. He pointed out that the registers can overlap a lot, but that it was healthier to just switch between them without straining by trying to carry the chest voice up into a register that was easier to sing in falsetto, for example. And you might be surprised to know that he noticed that the registers are the same in men and women. They happen in the same places. It's just that men have more of the chest, the lower end, and women have more of the head voice at the upper end. But they both cross over in the falsetto, and the falsetto voice produced correctly can sound very similar in men and women. It could be hard to tell without looking which you were listening to. So let's listen to some examples of the three registers as Garcia and his student Larkham describe them. The chest voice, which has much greater power of vibration than the falsetto, requires accordingly a more determined pinching or contraction of the glottis. Now, when Garcia talks about a veiled sound, he means that it's a breathy voice. You can hear the air escaping. The falsetto is generally the more veiled of the two and requires a greater expenditure of air. These two registers in their lower notes set in vibration the entire length of the glottis, and the gradual ascending of the sounds in the vocal scale causes the cartilages to come more and more into contact, vibration being effected at last by the tendons alone. Agnes Larkham had more to say about the head voice because she was more interested in female voices. My experience as a teacher has shown me that in the majority of voices, the head notes are the last to be developed. We all know that they are generally the first to go, and it is foolish to try and arrest their decay. This is what Garcia had to say. With men, the head sounds exist only as a mere remnant of the boy's voice, and are at best but a poor resource. Male singers do wrong to use them. So let's listen to some examples of exactly how and when to use your three registers. Garcia seemed to agree with the old practice of singing as much in the chest voice as possible, because he said, falsetto notes can be produced with nearly as much facility by baritones, tenors and countertenors as by female voices, but male singers will derive little advantage from their use. But then he went on to say, modern music is too high for the tenor singer and obliges him to have recourse to falsetto. But women were expected to use chest and falsetto, or the middle voice, interchangeably. It will be seen that although both the chest and falsetto registers have the same compass, their employment is not a matter of indifference, for the character of sonorousness belonging to the one is exactly opposite to that of the other, the chest register being vigorous, penetrating and adapted to the expression of impassioned and energetic feelings, whereas the falsetto is veiled and soft, and suited to the expression of the milder sentiments, or of restrained grief. Could you hear the contrast when he switched to chest register on that final note, and how exciting it was? By the early 20th century, Larkham was complaining of the rather fashionable method very much to the fore today of making the medium register do the work of three. Contraltos do not avail themselves of the brilliantly resonant chest notes which form the most useful and attractive part of their special endowment, and sopranos do not develop the fluty, pure head notes which are so beautiful and characteristic. The mezzo alone is fairly happy. So I said last time that the new verismo singers were carrying up the sounds of the middle voice into the high head notes. It seems that already by 1920 they were starting to push down the middle voice into what should be the chest register as well. There is something else which Larkham and Garcia only mention very briefly. I have noticed what appeared to me to be a fourth register in the female voice. It has seemed to me that these notes were produced by a kind of damping process. This is often called the flageolet register, and there is a much more detailed section on it in Richard Miller's book, Training Soprano Voices, which was published in 2000. He also describes it as a damping process. Only the anterior, forward portion of the vocal folds is set into vibration. And he argues that all female voices should practice it because he thinks that it would be very useful and very healthy for the voice. But in the past, it wasn't commonplace. It wasn't expected of a singer to be able to sing these very high notes. So, 3 registers with an optional fourth for those that have the power. That's all done and dusted, and we can all go home and leave it there. Except that people are still arguing about it today. I firmly believe in the 3 register theory because I'm not one of those lucky people who have a very little variation between their registers and a seamless scale that they can move up and down with ease without having to worry about the passage notes in between. They are and always have been rare, and for the rest of us, I think it really helps to understand registers and what they are and how they work. And for me, I have 3 very distinct registers, so that means that I can prove the 3 register theory exists in my own voice. And also that when you allow there to be 3 registers, you can give each of them their own worth, their own beauty, and acknowledge that they all have something to offer, although they can have quite different characters. So that's all sorted then. Except, what then is the so-called fourth voice? It's not the flageolet register. It's something that only a few people in history have been noted for being able to access it and make good use of it, and even fewer have been caught on record so that we can hear them today. But you bet that's what we're going to be listening to next time. It will be a short episode probably, just as a stepping stone, because it will be pertinent to our next video on It's What He Would Have Wanted. So if you want to stick around for that, then tap the subscribe button and the notifications so that you'll know as soon as it's uploaded. And don't forget you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Opera Phantoms, where I'll be sharing hints as to what we'll be looking at next and some fun facts about the history of singing as I learn them. And that's all for now. So stay tuned for the next seance with the Phantoms of the Opera. Sorry if from the intro music you were expecting something about yodeling, which, by the way, is caused by switching very quickly between the registers so that you can hear what some people call the break, which is the changeover point. If you would like to know more about yodeling and the break and the passage notes, then leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.